action, including an immediate appeal, to hold Letitia James and James Comey accountable for their unlawful conduct.
Criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool with us on this. Good to see you, Brian. Is this over for real, or you think, or one or the other, or how do you see it playing out from this point?
Hey, Connell, great to see you again. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. Yeah, look, at the end of the day, Pam Bondi's going to appeal. She would appeal it to what's called the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. And then, depending on how the court rules there, this may find its way then to the U.S. Supreme Court. But this is not an easy issue to decide, Connell. It's a matter of first impression. Likely the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to determine the issue of whether President Trump, under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, that's the law that applies, whether under that law, Trump can appoint Halligan as the interim U.S. attorney to prosecute or to have the grand jury held in the Comey case. And the core issue here is going to be, can he do that without Senate confirmation? That's what the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to decide. So matter of first impression, my gut feeling tells me here that it's not going to be a favorable result for the president on this case. It's a little different than what happened with Eileen Cannon in the classified document case against President Trump when Jack Smith was appointed. Cannon, the judge, that was a little different standard because Congress had never approved the appointment of what's called a special counsel. So to me, that was an easier decision for a federal judge to say, look, it's unconstitutional then for Jack Smith to be appointed. But this issue is a little dicier.
Let's hear what Caroline Leavitt had to say. You mentioned Halligan and how she was appointed. And, I don't know if her experience, which she didn't have any as a prosecutor, plays into this at all. But here's what Caroline Leavitt said about it yesterday.
I know there was a judge who is clearly trying to shield Letitia James and James Comey from receiving accountability, and that's why they took this unprecedented action to throw away the indictments against these two individuals. But the Department of Justice will be appealing very soon, and it is our position that Lindsay Halligan is extremely qualified for this position, but more importantly, was legally appointed to it.
So it was interesting, as she said, more importantly there at the end, because, the extremely qualified, just put that aside. I don't think there's any argument that says she's qualified. She never prosecuted the case in her life. How could she be qualified? But is she legally appointed? That's what you're getting at. Are the two related or no?
Well, you raise a good point. I personally, I don't even think the issue is she qualified?
Right.
The issue is whether Trump is empowered under this Federal Vacancies Reform Act to appoint her on an interim basis. Now, what I find troubling about Leavitt's comment is why is she deciding that a judge is trying to, gut this case? I think myself, a lot of people across this country, Connell, are a little bit tired of the judicial system. I've been a trial lawyer for many years. I'm tired of seeing the judicial system used as a weapon to promote a political agenda. Remember, Trump was very critical of the hush money case, the classified documents case. The hush money case shouldn't have been brought. We all thought that was politically motivated. But that's not the issue here, Caroline Leavitt. The issue is, can he legally do this? And I got to tell you that under this Federal Vacancies Reform Act, there's got to be a vacancy to start with, right? There's got to be somebody that couldn't have done the job, and that's why she was appointed. So I think they have a hurdle there, and the U.S. Supreme Court's going to end up with this. And look, if I had to prognosticate, I think they're going to say you need some kind of Senate confirmation under this circumstance.
The reason they had a vacancy is not because someone couldn't do the job, right, Brian? Is because someone didn't want to necessarily prosecute this case.
That's a great point. Excellent point. That's a fantastic point, Connell. This is because somebody didn't want to do it. Other people looked at it and said, we don't find that there's going to be an indictment here. The facts don't support it. So I would argue that it doesn't legally meet the standard of whether there was truly a vacancy here. Whether somebody retired, for example, then maybe Trump's got an argument here. But even then, it's going to be difficult because the real issue is, should the Senate be involved here?
It's interesting what you brought up earlier, too, because we had similar conversations. That's why I know this is not a biased conversation, because we had similar conversations on the other side in the previous administration when, to your point, there were accusations about a lot of the cases, even the ones brought against Trump in New York. They said, well, this is just pure politics. And now you're seeing it play out on the other side. Now, Comey seems to think that, and which is interesting, this is the last thing I wanted to ask you about because of the statute of limitations, that they'll find a way to come after him again. Here's what Comey said.
I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude is going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary, the gift from our founders that protects us from a would-be tyrant.
Okay. When he says, come after me again, do you think he's talking about, finding something else? Because I thought there was a statute of limitations on this one that already expired.
Yeah, Connell, I think what he's referring to is coming after him again for this indictment. So the way it spells out is, if the Circuit Court and if the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately determines that this ruling was correct, that Halligan could not have been appointed by Trump to carry out this indictment, then the statute of limitations is blown, right? It doesn't relate back.
Oh, okay.
And because there were only a few days left before the indictment was secured, right? So if the ultimate Supreme Court says, look, this was not in accordance with the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, then Comey's off scot-free. You can't go back now and try to get a new indictment on these facts. Mm-hmm. That said, though, if, for example, the Supreme Court says, look, Trump was authorized to appoint Halligan, and that's the issue they decide, then it relates back to the date that the indictment...
Which they got it in time there. They had it in. They beat the deadline, so to speak. All right. That explains it. All right. Thank you, Brian. As always, great to have you on. Brian Claypool.